going to share a little bit of the good stuff from the North Country, Wisconsin, with y'all here from Southern Culture on the Fly. I'm Brad Bowen, and with Musky Country Outfitters. We're down here in McMinnville, Tennessee, at the Musky Fly Fishing World Championships, and thought it'd be fun to show off a little Wisconsin flair to the musky scene. One of my favorite all-around big predator patterns is a fly we call the Buford, and it's basically a big giant muddler minnow, or sort of a mutated version of like a Dalberg diver form, but on a 5/0 platform here. This is a pretty cool hook. We search long, hard for really, the best type of hook with a gap and a bend that's going to effectively penetrate and hold a big predator like a pike or a muskie. And I really recommend that everybody consider pinching their barbs with those big predator fish. It makes handling them and releasing them and just dealing with them a lot easier on the fish and the angler, and it just is smart for the resource and the conservation. So go barbless if you can, and it works. But I got this. We have these spinnerbait hooks. They're a 55-015 Gammy, and the real deal. They're saltwater worthy, and these this is a pattern excuse me, that's traveled the world and produced for a lot of different species. Dorado down in the South America, and fish like tigerfish, they all like this form. So I enjoy it, and I actually caught my biggest fish was a 51.25-inch muskie. That's a 36-pound tippet world record, and it was a double catch called Thunder and Lightning on a clear day. So we'll try to give you a little bolt out of the blue here today. Anyway, I got the base stuff for this is our real long premium bucktail, and you look for the long flowing bucktail, and that's the key to the movement. We're going to show you a bulky looking fly that doesn't have a lot of bulk, so it's easy to cast. Puffs up nice in the water, has a lot of flow, because we're going to be incorporating a couple different types of flash, and then some pretty heavy duty saddle feathers as well. And that's about it, along with some clear kirgu to finish it off. We'll be all going. So here we go with you. This is the Buford, and I'm just using some techniques that basically come from guys like Dan Blanton and Bob Popovics and Clauser. So those great fly tires that we grew up reading and emulating, and the guys that were pioneering the big the big predator pattern stuff. It's just a blend of all that. And the first batch I'm going to put in is just going to be what you'd call kind of standard way, with the tips facing rearward, and what that becomes, and this is sort of how I start all my predator patterns, but that's a sort of a rudder or a foundation that'll keep the rest of the materials flowing up. So you find your longest bucktail, and always clip right at the skin and keep that length. That length is really critical. Those really long fibers are very valuable, and some guys even collect those out of each tail and save them, and then have them for special really big flies, because you get a really big profile out of this without a lot of bulk, and it's very durable, holds up well to teeth. It's a natural fiber. I'm really big on natural fibers. The feathers that we choose to are actually really durable. Just think, these are all materials that animals coat, and they lived outside, and so you wash them and we clean them up, and they retain their natural elasticity, and so the best materials really create the best dish, just like in a good restaurant. So, but yeah, we're going to tie this bucktail in using its whole length, and that's going to kind of give us our overall length to this fly, which is going to be pretty significant, you can see, just for a single pattern. But I like to wrap 3 or 4 kind of capture wraps, not super tight, and then we'll start to distribute this around. I missed a couple of those fibers, but we'll just let that material sort of work its way around. You can increase the thread pressure a little bit, and that starts to hold them in place. I just like to get a nice halo of that around, and that'll that sets the tone for the whole pattern. Okay, so then we'll just tie some to secure it, and I'll run, just kind of zigzag the thread forward a little bit. through that, and then it really locks everything down nicely. And you'll see as these patterns develop a little bit, they get fishy right from the get-go. I mean, they look real good, but we're going to just start going with hair, flash, feather, and we'll do hair, flash, feather a few times. And we'll get into the flash-a-boo here. And you can go, I mean, depending on the type of situation, sometimes you can go very sparse with the flash, and other times you want to build a more brilliant fly, and you can really get heavy with the flash materials. Whatever. I guess I kind of go middle of the road on that. I'm going to lay that in, and again, you know, we're dealing with big predator fish, a lot of light pressure, a lot of teeth, so all our tying, you know, our tying techniques and doing this pattern is all based on sort of locking things in, down with the thread and building materials upon materials, and you'll see how that works. They become very bite proof and very durable, which is another key. So, excuse me, we're building a kind of an engineered predator pattern from the get-go here. And you want a fly that's going to last, that's going to swim balanced and swim well, and look good to the eye, and also it can't foul. And that's one of the reasons that we build it the way that we're doing here, because all these materials kind of keep everything from wrapping around down in the hook gap when you're fishing and fouling a cast, because there's nothing worse than, you know, especially the fish at 10,000 casts in musky, you never know which one they're going to come on, and you hate to get a cast, and I've seen it time and again with patterns that, you know, are prone to fouling up. You throw a great cast, you got a fly that's fouled and it doesn't fish right, and the fish comes out and looks at it and it just doesn't do it, and it's really frustrating. So if you get a fly that's tied at the bench to be non-fouling, the better off. So we kind of double over that flash-a-boo on the thread, and then you can slide it on down, place it where you want it, put a couple of wraps to secure it, and then you can mess around with it. You can kind of distribute it around with your thumb pressure, and you can see I like to sort of get it draping over the top half, and it basically forms a halo that the angler is going to see. You're going to see that from above. The flash is as much to help the angler follow and track the fly through the presentation as it is, you know, I think, to attract the fish. But in this way, you could actually distribute it around like we did with the hair all the way 360. Some guys do that and it looks good. I tend to kind of keep my flash in the upper half of my fly with a more muted bottom. I don't know, that's just my style, but I've seen guys that will tie it, you know, in a 360 mode there, and that's really pretty attractive too. So we got the hair, the flash, now we add the feather. And in the Buford way, you know, there's a bunch of different types of feathers that we deal with in these big flies. These are more of a kind of a side, big giant side, you know, off the saddle, still the saddle, the back feather, it's before the schlappen, and then which is between the saddle and the tail feather is the schlappen, which is more of a long and wavy type feather. So yeah, we're looking at the difference in, you know, some genetic hackle, and we got the kind of a more of what I like to call a kicker feather. Has definitely a curve to it, and you can tie them either way. You know, with the Buford style, you know, I think the primary form is a big frog or something. You know, they'll have a flare out the back with these if you tie them opposing. The pairs, as we're going to lay them in there, those, you know, that you can see that they'll form almost like a pair of frog legs or a kicker or something like that. And it's a fun action to fish, and the fish seem to really get excited about it. So it's cool. Or, you know, these big bulky flies, they can be a minnow, an amphibian, or a small mammal. You know, mice and voles and things like that are commonly crushed. Small ducks, a little bit of everything. So you're just really getting that, you know, 10 to 12 inch creature that is in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you know, it's just like that kid at recess that just didn't quite keep up. You know, they're the ones that get picked on by the predators. So that's what you're looking for. All right, so we're into these saddles, and we're going to kind of bomb through the rest of this here. This is commando fly tying and filming at its finest, and can't say enough about how good a time we have with Southern culture on the fly down here in Tennessee, and looking forward to doing some more stuff with you guys. We have some really cool anglers down this way, and it's a big wide world out there. Travel around the country, connect with other fishermen, see the world in the fly fishing way. I think you'll agree. So we're going to go back to the bucktail again. And another thing that's nice about using all this big premium material is that a little goes a long way, and we can kind of, with this 5/0 platform here, we've got a lot of hook shank. We don't necessarily have to go wall-to-wall bulk. You can build a very bulky pattern by butting this stuff up tightly, but I'm going to advance forward here probably 1/4 inch a little bit, and I'm going to lay the next batch in, and I'm going to turn that around. We're going to reverse tie this in with the butts facing backwards, alright, and then we're going to bend the hair back on itself, and that'll give us the profile of the fly. Now we basically have the length all covered here with that first bit. Now we're going to work on the profile up into the head area. We're going to lay these in, trim the butts even, again finding the longest stuff you can, preserve that length. We're going to overlap that a bit, and so these butts will face rearward, and they're going to cover up where we tied in that first material for any kind of tooth attack on it. You'll see me spin my thread a bit here. I like to have a nice tight wound thread when I capture all this stuff, because it'll take a couple 3 turns, and the more you apply pressure, then that thread pressure will help really control the material. Let it flow around the hook. You help it around, you get a nice halo like that. Secure it down, 3, 4, 5 wraps. You can see how there's going to be like an inner profile, and then these tips will fold back. Alright, so then we have this ability to create kind of almost any form or shape. If we were wanting a really tall profile, we can keep those, we can fold that hair back and have like like a panfish or a crappie or something like that profile. But if we want a little more streamlined, we just continue to fold those back and wrap the thread back on it, and you'll see that I tend to kind of fish more all perch and shad style and sucker patterns that are a little more streamlined, so that you can see you wrap that back on itself, and the material just encapsulates everything behind it, and it makes a really nice balanced fly that flows well, as well as a durable fishable pattern, and it crushes fish. So all the good stuff, and it's just really three materials: hair, feather, and flash, and a couple of them you can gather yourself, and the other one you can pretty much find everywhere. And you can see I'll keep them pretty flared out down this way, and so I'm going to put a little more flash on. And again, I don't have to have, I'm going to double this over this time, so it's 50-50, and we're just adding kind of layers of this stuff. And you can do different colors. You can have a different color, every color in the rainbow. You can make a really variable fly, if that's your way. But I'm sticking right now with kind of this orange theme, which we tend to use a lot around. And the predators find it attractive. I think there has been studies done in predator fish, especially the pike and the muskie, the way that their eye is designed. They respond best to that orange color scheme, and that's kind of our anecdotal findings as well. It's a really popular pattern in our stained water, and I've also been able to travel around and fish a bit with some musky people around the musky world, and the orange, even in clear water situations, a lot of times I think it, especially in the low light, is a shade that shows up in the predator's world, where they hunt with a different light spectrum than the human eye sees, so they see things underwater differently, and the sunlight penetration or the lack of sunlight penetration, and the stain or the lack of stain in the water, those are all contributing things to what hue or color actually ends up being the hot one. So you can tie this in anything from natural and white to, they do a lot of chartreuse, reds, blacks, just about any color you can find or dye yourself. It's pretty interesting. Now I've seen more and more people that are getting into the art of getting their own materials, which is neat about the bucktail. If you know any hunting friends or you're in a state where there's hunters, it's pretty easy in the fall to get a hold of some tails and wash them, clean them up, and make your own dye baths and dye them. You can get any color you want then, custom made, and it's pretty rewarding to be able to take your art to a different level, getting your own kind of flavors done, and it's really, really, really rewarding for us to be able to do that. I know. You can see I'm just, again, the hair and the feather and the flash going forward. I'll probably do another one or two of that, and then we'll end up putting a big spun hair that we clip a little bit head on the front that pushes water like crazy. And that's the whole thing about this pattern, is that it really moves the water in the big predators. I'm going to go to a different type of flash here now. I'm only putting 4 feathers in there. It's really all you need on this pattern. It makes that kicker thing go really well, and you'd be surprised how alive it looks and how those feathers look like legs or something back there propelling it along. It's just crazy, like you fish these things on a sunken line down deep, and they look like a big giant prawn or a crayfish as well. So there's a lot, and I know guys that have taken them down into like Bohen and stuff there, where they have squid pattern. They use the squid pattern and stuff, and it emulates squid. So just about anything, and you can fish them smaller, fish them bigger. All those sizes seem to work pretty well. So I'm going to start getting in more now. I'll start building the collar. I'm going to flip that bucktail over, and there's a little more hollow fiber up into this top side where the tail meets, and that can be spun and flared more so than the underside of the bucktail, which is less hollow. So I'm going to grab that, and then there's those fibers, those under hairs. You got to make sure you get those out of there without screw up your thread work, and it can cut your thread, and that's just nasty little duff in there. Those are pretty bad fibers. They're actually triangular. You have a little edge, and they'll wreck your thread in there, and that's a bummer. So avoidable. I've grabbed some of those dyed parts there that from the back that have a little darker hue, and so we'll get a mottled effect up in here for this collar. And we'll just begin to work on the head, the bulk of the head. Then I'm going to lay a little base in there. Again, we'll just 1, 2, 3 times, and we'll bring that all around and start to capture it like that. And you can see how it flares really nice. Wants to just go right around the hook. It's all about thread control, thread pressure. Learn to go right up to the edge of the breaking point in the thread, but you don't gotta, you shouldn't be breaking thread. It's all about just controlling that way that you get the thread around the material and allow everything to kind of flow. When it's practiced and done right, you can see it's a pretty efficient way to go. And then from here, we're just gonna advance that thread forward, and you don't have to pack these Buford heads tight, like super tight like you would trying to keep this. This is not a surface fly, it's more of it's a fly. You can fish it up in the film, and you can struggle it through the upper inch of water, and it makes a nice waking fly on a dry line for sure. But we end up working these on pretty heavy duty sinking lines, 300 to 500 grain lines. Space here and on the memory card, but I just basically came forward with 2 more whirls of the spun bucktail from the top side, back of the bucktail that's a little bit more buoyant, more air filled, and then we're just gonna do a couple of whip finishes up here to knock it off, and we'll trim it up and be done with her. And the Buford is alive, but it's got a big, I don't have to trim it up a whole lot to be satisfied with. You know, if you can shape these things. I'm no Pat Cohen, I guess is what I'm saying. But you can get pretty creative on the trimming or the design of the head of these things to do different things. I just like want a real oddball that swims in a knuckleball way on a big heavy line down in, you know, more for depth. If you wanted to have a fly that stayed more on the surface, you could pack that spun head a little bit, quite a bit tighter, and actually make it bigger. But you can see on a 5/0 hook, we get a pretty big hunk of meat here. That I mean, that's hot. That's a hot, sexy fly, and in the water, it'll look much like that size. And it pulses, and it does a lot of different things. And on a heavy sunken line, it'll go down and follow things, and it'll bob and weave down there, and those fish will come in and absolutely crush it. I mean, it's a big fly, but you know, smallmouth, a big trophy smallmouth will hit that. Walleye, catfish, striped bass, all the pike, family stuff, into freshwater or salt waters. I've had guys that put them on Great Lakes stuff for king salmon and lake run browns and that kind of thing. So it's if you got something that crushes other fish or mammals or amphibians or big crustaceans, think about giving Buford a try. Get in there and have some fun this season.